However, 38% believe that success often comes from the unlikeliest of partnerships. Different points of view are welcome here. HSBC, the world's local bank.
Six days that changed history. The 1967 Six-Day War. It put the heartland of biblical Judaism under Israeli control. Amanpour wanted to make sure it stayed that way.
We felt this was the time to seize the moment.
He and a small group of religious activists began planning a return to the land his parents once farmed, a community called Kfar Etzion in the now occupied West Bank.
We were returning home and fulfilling the prophecy.
But the Israeli government was divided. Trade the captured land for peace or keep it and build Jewish settlements. In researching his book, The Accidental Empire, Gershom Gorenberg discovered in Israel's archives these documents marked top secret. Written in September 1967 by Foreign Ministry lawyer Theodore Meron, the memos are a warning that civilian settlement contravenes the explicit provisions of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which protects people living under occupation.
It means that it violated international law.
But if Theodore Meron's legal opinion was correct, how is it that Israelis would build as many as 250 settlements and outposts in the middle of Arab land?
The legal advisor of the Foreign Ministry doesn't tell us how to defend our lives.
President Shimon Peres, one of Israel's longest-serving and highest-ranking politicians, initially supported settlements.
Are you saying Theodore Meron was wrong?
I don't know if he was right or wrong from a legal point of view, but he was wrong from a pragmatic point of view. Israel was under a steady attack all the time.
So just to help me understand this, for the Israeli leadership at the time, pragmatism triumphed over international law.
What you call pragmatism was in our eyes.
You just said pragmatism.
Pragmatism in the sense of security, of defending our lives, yes.
President Peres now says getting rid of most of the settlements is key to a lasting peace. Israel's official position is that its settlements do not violate international law. It calls the West Bank disputed territory, not occupied, because it says it was never a recognized independent country.
The real problem is, you can call it pragmatic, you can call it legal. Was the war over? It was not.
40 years later, we spoke to Theodore Meron, a Holocaust survivor who became one of the world's most respected authorities on international law. He stands by his top-secret memos to the Israeli leaders.
You can justify a lot of things on grounds of security, but you cannot settle your population in occupied territories.
No doubt in your mind?
No doubt.
No wiggle room in the law?
Not really.
Certainly when somebody can present you the Torah and the Bible and say, look, this is our land, then any man-made law is in confrontation with God's law.
I cannot argue with the Word of God. Any lawyer can only discuss things from the secular perspective. In other words, I do not believe that religion can resolve legal disputes.
But to religious activists, God's law trumped all others. Amanpour went ahead with his plan to resettle Kfar Etzion. Sympathetic government officials downplayed it with a cover story that it was a legally authorized military post. And that's what the sign out front said.
Everybody knew this was no military post. It was all just a show.
So the settlers took down the sign and used it as a doormat.
That tells you how we felt as people who were there as civilians and not as soldiers.
Another group of Jews went to Hebron and rented rooms in an Arab-owned hotel. It was just for a few days of religious study and to celebrate Passover, or so they said.
Are you asking if they misled the government? There's no doubt it was a political trick.
The people who led this effort made it very clear that the reason that they were doing it is that they wanted Hebron to remain under Israeli rule.
When the Jews announced they were staying, this time Israeli officials worried there would be a confrontation with Hebron's Arab residents. The settlers eventually agreed to move just outside the city, temporarily. But over time, that temporary compromise became a permanent settlement, Kiryat Arba. Population today, 7,000.
The decision to let them stay was essentially a victory for the settlers and a defeat for those in the government who opposed the move.
It would take another war in 1973 to transform the small band of settlers into a religious and political mass movement that would change the face of the Holy Land. This time, Israel fought an uphill battle after a surprise attack by Arab armies on the Jewish holy day, Yom Kippur. Even though victorious, Israelis now felt vulnerable.
A certain complacency had set in after the 1967 victory in Israel.
Religious historian Karen Armstrong.
Israelis thought they were invincible. This gave them a real shock, and they felt acutely their isolation. And among the religious, it was felt that secular Zionism had failed.
God's Jewish warriors claimed to have the solution, an all-out campaign to settle the West Bank. Their movement took a name, Gush Emunim, the Block of the Faithful. One of the most faithful, Yehuda Etzion. When he saw this Israeli military base being built high on a West Bank hill, Etzion and his friends convinced the contractor to hire them. Then they moved into these dilapidated buildings near the job site. Using the name of a biblical town in the book of Joshua, they posted a sign, Ofra Work Camp.
Was it really a camp for workers?
That and more. We came here to build a settlement.
So you tricked them. You kind of lied about your intentions.
I wouldn't call it lying. It was more like we got the land in a roundabout way.
Roundabout, and like the earlier schemes, effective. Ofra grew, and so did popular support for the settlers.
Remember, this is the 1970s. This is at the same time that Islamic radicalism is rising in the Muslim world. It's the same time that fundamentalists are returning to politics in the United States. Religion, which had been written off as a factor in the politics of the modern world, was suddenly returning to the political arena.
In Israel, a right-wing leader named Menachem Begin was elected prime minister in 1977 on a platform of keeping what the religious believed was the biblical land of Israel. It was a victory for God's Jewish warriors. And at Ofra, a new sign went up, "Keep off the grass." The settlers were here to stay.